Sunday night. I've actually crossed the hurdles I was facing yesterday, and I figured I'd go ahead and just do a lightweight live stream. So I don't think I'll be live streaming for very long, but I wanted to kind of capture what I've been working on since yesterday's live stream. So I don't know if you remember or if you watched the last video, but if I remember correctly, I was having trouble with registration and login, and so I figured out some things, and I think I'll go ahead and start sharing. So I went ahead and merged to the branch that I was working on, and right now I've actually moved on to LiveNavigation. So let's see here. Turn off this alarm. Okay. So I've made a couple changes. Things are a little bit disorganized here. Let me sort these tabs so I can kind of walk you through what's going on. Okay. I think what I was stumped on last night was getting the user token from JavaScript into the server. I've slept since then, so I'm not sure if I don't want to recover ground that I've already covered last night. So anyway, I've got my live routes, or my live session scope with some live routes inside of this. I have a default init assigns, and then I've separated out this user settings route to a separate live session. And I'm not sure if this is going to be the permanent solution, but I think I want to group together any routes that require a user. So I think those will live here. I couldn't really tell from the documentation whether this could be nested inside live session, but I think it's probably better to not have it nested. I think nesting can make things a little bit harder to understand, especially if there's a ton of routes. So I've got my init assigns module here. This isn't entirely new. I think I showed this yesterday, but the default on mount hook here just kind of checks to see if there's a user. If there's a user token, it will try to get that out of the socket, and then it will try to decrypt the token and find the user. And one thing I changed, I think, since yesterday is instead of just hitting assign on every mount, this assign new function will only call accounts.getUser by session token if there's not already a current user assigned. Now that could be a nil value, or it could be a real user, or it could be anything really assigned to current user, but it's not going to actually hit the database and make this query unless there's no current user key inside of the socket assigns. So that's a little bit to digest there, but in a nutshell, don't hit the database every time this on mount. Like every time a live view is mounted, I don't want to hit the database every single time. I only want to hit that if if there is no current user key in the assigns. So what else? There's some fallovers here where it will just put a nil value if there's no current user key. And then what's new is the RequireUser hook. So this takes the socket assigns. If there is an actual user struct assigned to current user, then it's going to let the socket continue. Otherwise, it's going to halt the socket and redirect to the login path. So what's great about that, let me log out here. So if I am not logged in, first of all, I'll show you there's no session token. I'll clear out these old errors. So session, there's no user token in the session storage. I know that's really tiny. Let me blow this up a little bit as well. So this is what I'm looking at here. The on mount hook with RequireUser, it takes the socket assigns. If there's an actual user struct, it just lets the socket go ahead and continue. Otherwise, it redirects to user login path. So here at the landing page, it does not require a user. It just checks to see if there is one in the socket. But we do actually need a user if we're going to hit the user's settings page. So I don't know, it happened really fast, but it just redirected to the login page. So I would try to go to users / settings, but it redirected to the login route, which is what I want it to do. So now it requires me to enter username, authenticate, and then it will redirect me back to the landing page. Now, I was looking before the stream to see if there's something built into the socket or session or params about referring. Like, let's say I hit user / settings and it redirects me to log in. Typically in a web app, you want to be redirected back to the path that you just came from before being redirected. I didn't see how to do that from the docs, but I may look at that here in a moment if I've got some energy. So let's see. So now I can go to user settings. I should be able to go to user settings. Okay. I think I see what's happening here. So I've got a little bit of an issue to sort. Okay. So what's happening is when you load the page, the first page load is an HTTP request. There's no current user because it has to wait for the JavaScript to load and the socket to be available so that the JavaScript can send the user token to the server. So it doesn't have that whenever the page first loads. So right now, even though I'm logged in, it's redirecting me back to log in, and then it's finding out that I'm actually logged in and it's getting me back to the landing page. So it's kind of a loop here, and that's not exactly what I want. So let's see, that's a little bit big. Oh, one thing I did run up against, and I was talking in Slack with Morphic Pro about this. So whenever you generate a Phoenix app, by default these days it puts like your navbar in the root layout. So typically you would see all of your navbar HTML listed just inside of the body tag here. And then you would have a main section with inner content. And one of the first things you want to do if you're going with the fully live view based application and you don't expect to have any pages, the first thing you're probably going to want to do is convert your navbar to be a live component, or maybe a traditional functional Phoenix component or a live component. There's also you can also build it as a live view in itself. So there's some trade-offs to doing that. There's a nice blog article from Fly about making a live view for your navbar. And I actually kind of started down this road, but as I was thinking about hundreds or thousands of users connecting, each live view is a separate process. So, if you look at a page that has a navbar, if that was its own live view, you would have a process for that. You would have a process for any other live views on the page. So that could get expensive really fast. The more live views you start dumping in there. It's not necessary to have a live view. So what I've done is I've made my navbar into a live component. And that's this thing here. So it uses the live component function out of the LiveShowy web. And so I have a prop here for current user. I did try to use data current user, so it would just pluck current user out of the assigns. But if I remember correctly, it just wasn't working very well. So I'm using it as an assign here. I'm sorry, a prop. So so I basically stripped out the navbar from the root layout and then moved this navbar into the live layout. So it only gets rendered on like a live socket view. It will not be rendered on the app, like the dead view layout, which I don't intend to actually display to anybody for anything. So so there were some modifications around that, but this is how I'm assigning the current user prop. And by the way, this is just shorthand for it means the same thing. It's just shorthand to kind of assign the key and the value at the same time. I've got my flash messages here. Nothing has changed on that. So what happens now is I'm not really doing anything on mount, so I could probably remove that. I was initially just kind of checking to see what was in the socket. And so the Navbar can receive push events. So if you call push event from another live view and you target this Navbar, it could receive an update that way. But there's actually a kind of a clever way to do this. I don't think it's too clever. I think it's just the right amount of cleverness. And I kind of learned about this from the Surface docs. So whenever you have a live component that has state, but like the live view itself doesn't pick up on events, or there's no handle info for live components. So it needs to be told when there's an update that's relevant. So what I'm doing here is whenever I log in, I'm calling a function, where is it? So I call this function called setCurrentUser on the Navbar. And so there's a few places where I do this. I do this in sign up, login, and then in logout, I just tell it to assign a nil value to current user. And so I'm going to go ahead and remove this mount because it's not actually doing anything here. So let's take a look and see what happens whenever we log in and log out with this. Well, got an error there. So what happened? So terminating no function clause event, handle event. Okay, so there's no handle event for logout. Handle event. What was the event? Okay, I'm going to add this kind of catch-all handler to logout because it seems like it was not already there. I guess I'll go ahead and log in and try not to forget about the logout thing. Okay, so now we should have... So I logged in. Found the user key, user token. Grab the email or grab the user and got redirected. And then you can see it's checking the user token again. What I'm a little bit concerned about, first of all, let's make sure logout doesn't throw any more errors. Very good. Okay. We got the errors we actually wanted though. So first of all, this section here, it's red, but that's just showing it's color coded because it's a delete. So it's deleting a record from the database. So it's color coded just to catch your attention. I mean, we're going to be deleting and creating user tokens all the live long day. But like say, if you deleted a user, that's not something you do every day. It's something that you do for GDPR. Typically, you're doing a soft delete instead of actually deleting the record. But anyway, so that's why that's red. These other two items here, we've got these errors that I'm actually logging from the logout module. So that's what I needed to know. It's receiving the user token, and it's receiving this WebAuthn supported true. And those just weren't handled, so that's okay. Actually, I think I did this just so it would catch my attention, but I'm going to make this a debug because this, I really only care about this while I'm in development. I don't necessarily need this to generate errors if I deploy this to production and connect it to an error reporting service. So I'm going to search, you know what, let me, I'm going to find and replace, make sure I make debug and do debug here. Okay. Just want to keep my terminal sane. Okay, so I'm logged out. There's no session token there. So let's log in, and then we'll come back to what's happening with the Navbar. So the Navbar should be getting an update. Okay, so so I logged in. I got redirected to the landing page, which is good. So I'm seeing my username here. I've got my settings link. I've got a link to live dashboard, and then I've got a link to logout. Now, just I guess to be a little bit all over the place, let me go back to my Navbar. I want to put the username ahead of the other links, just while I'm thinking about this. I guess live dashboard should only be displayed if there's a current user as well. That's going to be even more protected later on. That will actually require like an admin type user, someone with an admin role. Like you don't want to have every user in the world going into the dashboard. There's some, potentially bad things that can happen there. It's an extremely useful tool if you're monitoring your application, especially while it's running, and you can even enable this in production, but you definitely want to make sure it's safeguarded so that only the most trusted users, like your engineers, really can access the live dashboard. Maybe support agents, depending on the type of app you're running. Okay, so like I said, let me just jump around a little bit here. I'm going to move the live dashboard link. Okay, this is only going to render whenever there's a user, so it will go within this block. Okay. And by the way, the other thing is by default, I think, is it in mix or is it in, maybe in the router as well? I think it's in both places. So we've got live dashboard. I'm not sure if it, okay, so live dashboard is just a plain dependency. It's not, it will compile to any environment, but the router only configures a route for that by default in the dev environment. So let's go to the router. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about here. So we've got live dashboard. This only is rendered in dev and test. That's fine for now. I'm going to change this, and this will, I'm going to make a note here to myself. This is for later. I need to wrap in okay, so further down the road, once I've made more progress, I will move the live dashboard. Like once I've actually gone through setting up user roles, I will move the live dashboard into a live session that checks for like whichever user roles I need to allow to have access to the dashboard. And yeah, so that's going to be a fun thought experiment later on. And then Mailbox, just while we're here. So this is for kind of previewing email messages that would be sent otherwise. This only applies to the development environment, so it doesn't really need to be protected in any way because it's only here for me on my machine. It's not going to be accessible to, like once this is deployed to production or staging even, no one, like this route just would not exist. So that's fine. So just to recap the router here, my most basic routes, so the landing page, sign up, log in, log out, those all go through the default hook inside of init assigns, and then I need to require a user for user settings, so I run it through default and also require user. So any of these live routes that before they mount, they'll run through both of these hooks. So that's nice because that means that I've got one place, at least so far, to manage authentication and a little bit of authorization. It's not role-based authorization yet. It's just kind of authorizing whether a user exists to be able to access a resource or a route. Okay. I'm being reminded that it is past wet food time for the cats, so I will be right back in just a moment. All right, cats are fun, right? So, all right, so the cats are fed. Now, where were we? Let's see. Okay. So I think everything is working the way it. No, I don't want to say that. Don't want to say that. Let's see. All right, everything went into dark mode while I stepped away. Okay, so that's why everything looks a little bit different. So okay. So logout happens. The username and live dashboard go away, so that's good. What I'm expecting to see that I'm not seeing is, so Navbar, let me go ahead and save this here. So let's see, whenever I log in, log out, I've got navbar.setCurrentUser, which is passing whatever the user is. Could be nil or could be an actual user. This is the function in Navbar that is being called. And so it sends an update to itself, to this module, with an ID of Navbar, and it assigns, this key with this value. So that's the argument that's being passed in. What's confusing to me at the moment is I should be seeing a debug message that this module, LiveShowy Web Components Navbar, has an unknown event, and I should be seeing, current user. Wait a minute. Let's take a look at send update, because maybe I'm misunderstanding what it does. So I'll blow this up a little bit. Send update. Where did you go? All right. Asynchronously updates a live component with new assigns. The ID that identifies the component must be passed. Oh, I see. So it's not an event. It's updating the assigns. So I don't have to actually manage that assign manually. But I can actually confirm that if I implement the update callback. So def update. What is it? Assigns then socket? Socket do. And there's a little bit of a dance you have to do here. You have to assign to the socket your assigns if you actually implement this function. So let's see, what do you do? IO inspect assigns. That should be self-explanatory. I don't necessarily need a label. Oh, and this has probably got to be an OK tuple, not no reply. There we go. Okay, so now whenever I hit login, of course I'm getting some unhandled events here, which is fine. That's from the login module. There we go. Okay. So yeah, okay. So this makes a lot more sense now. I'm glad I kind of went through this. So send update, and by the way, you could call this directly from another module. So I could say this is just kind of a convenience. This is a nice way to wrap it and make it easier on yourself. So like I could do this. I could say Navbar with the ID. I would have to, every time I call this, I would have to remember the ID. Because I don't think I'm going to have more than one navbar. So it's just going to be this one navbar. But yeah, we don't want to do that. So that's why I think I really like the suggestion from the Surface docs of just putting a function in that live component module that can call itself, can update its own assigns. Okay, so that makes sense. Now, why, whenever I go to users settings, why am I getting into this situation? I think it's the way I'm doing things in this init assigns. Because what's happening here, on mount, oh, I need to only do this if the socket is connected. That's what I think. Okay, so let's try that. So connection or connected. So if the socket is connected, and if, let's say if current user is a user struct from socket.assigns. That should be it. I will continue with the socket. I need to, let's see. Actually, that will work. Okay, so now I need to add an else and then match on a couple of different situations that might happen here. So let's say connected is false, then I don't actually want to redirect. I just want to let the socket continue because it will do this once before the socket actually mounts or connects. So we're just going to let the socket move along if it's not already connected. Otherwise, if we get how do I pattern match on that? This would be assigns. Okay, so you know what? I'm actually not sure. Let's see. Other results. I'm just going to finish this before I go through and try to explain what I'm confused about. So inspect other results. And then for now, I'm just going to let the socket continue. So this really isn't handling the error. It's just kind of telling me what's going on. Don't need that anymore. Okay, so let's see what happens if we have no user. Okay, I need to go to users settings to see this happen, I think. Wait, true. Okay. Oh, yeah, I forgot to do this. There we go. Aha, okay. That's what I needed to know. Okay, so I wasn't sure how to pattern match on, like, what if this is not a user? And simple enough. So this did not match an actual user struct, so it just passes whatever the assigns are. And it didn't match on this, so this will actually pick up. It will match on whatever the assigns are. If there's a current user key with a nil value, that's when I want to actually halt the socket and redirect it to the login. So that's what I'm going to do. Insulin pump. Okay. I think this was just going to be a redirect socket to routes dot user login path socket login. I think there was another option after that, but we'll see. And then I need to clear out this extra line there. There we go. Okay, so now I cannot actually see user settings. Let's see. It flashed for a second. I think I want to make sure that doesn't happen. Okay. So halt requires a redirect. This is one thing I've had a similar kind of issue. So when you're logged in, if you go to user settings, you see the login flash before it redirects back to the landing page. And here I'm actually seeing a user settings page flash for maybe a quarter of a second before it redirects back here, because whenever the socket has not connected, it's just letting the socket go forward. So I need to figure out what to do about that. I don't know about you. If I'm ever confused, or I need to like kind of stop and think, it also helps me to kind of clear out clutter. So tabs are a big one. I tend to keep just the tabs that are relevant to whatever I'm doing most days. And then if I've got kind of something that's going to take a few days, I may separate it out. And if it's unrelated to anything else, I may separate it out to a separate browser or separate window. So I've got a couple of those in the dock. But yeah, so how do I not render a live view before the socket mounts? So this is in the docs somewhere. I think, let's see, is it? Okay, so you begin by rendering a live view, typically from your router. When live view is first rendered, the mount callback is invoked with the current params, the current session, and the live view socket. As in a regular request, params contains public data that can be modified by the user. The session always contains private data set by the application itself. The mount callback wires up socket assigns necessary for rendering the view. After mounting, that's not what I was looking for. Like mount happens twice. Like the first time without, like it mounts before it's connected, then it mounts again after it's connected. I wish I understood how to get around that. Is it twice? Okay. So mount. This is the live view entry point. For each live view and the root of a template, mount is invoked twice. Once to do the initial page load, and again to establish the live socket. So maybe in user settings, I need to check for the user before I actually render anything. Okay, so let's see, settings. So we're only going to let it, well, what do I want to do here? First of all, there's not actually any settings, it's just a placeholder, which by the way, I should be using my heading component. Let me get that out of the way. Oh. Heading, there we go. just so it's consistent. So we'll see that for a part of a second. Okay. I guess I might as well do an emoji if all the other pages are going to have emojis in their title. These are the things you do when there's an actual problem to be solved. You're like, wait a minute, which emoji should I use for the page, like for the heading on the page? Gear. I don't want to do gear. Or like tools. Not for this app anyway. Let's do, ooh, I like this. Okay. Yeah, we'll have like a little knob for LiveShowy. I think that's the emoji that makes sense for me. Okay, so maybe I'm live streaming too late. Okay, so I've got the mount being called before before the socket is connected. Let me go back to init assigns. I don't want to redirect if the socket hasn't connected yet, because the socket just hasn't connected. So how do I do this? I guess the next thing I'll do while I'm thinking about that problem, I just want to have some kind of informational preview. I do this all the time whenever I'm working with data before I've actually figured out what I want to do with it. I will take, I will just kind of dump out the raw data onto the page so that I can kind of see what's there before I start building like form inputs and that kind of thing. So once I do render this with the user, that's what I should see is like the current user struct. Okay, so but why do I keep getting user settings? Maybe I just need to log in. Wouldn't that be funny? Yeah, there's no token here. Okay. Sometimes you get into this rhythm of fixing a problem and then you forget that maybe you actually did fix it. Ah, there we go. Okay. So I fixed one problem. I didn't fix the flash of the page before didn't fix the flash of the page before logging in. So I've still got to deal with that. But that's okay. So on the settings page, I kind of envision this, settings might be the wrong word. It might conflate a few different things. So here for LiveShowy, like what is LiveShowy? Probably touched on this every video so far, but like this is an app where you show up at some live performance, maybe other scenarios where you will connect your phone or your laptop or tablet or some device will be connected to either a local network or you might collaborate with someone across the internet. And primarily for music collaboration. So like you'll have synthesizers, and I want to put synthesizer settings and presets and patches and things here. I want those to be managed inside of settings, but I also want to manage email and username. Like I want the user to be able to update the username, update the email, and manage their user keys. So like they should be able to add another device, like either another touch, like another USB key or another authentication method on the same device, or they should be able to register with a separate device on the same account. Now that one's a little bit tricky, registering a separate device, like a say you have a MacBook register but not your iPhone. That's the situation I'm in here. I need to figure out how to do that. I've got a couple of ideas as I think about it now. But anyway, I've got what I need here on the settings page. So at this point, I can actually start rendering a form. That's something I do know how to do. I've been doing forms all my life, it feels like. So I'm going to go ahead and make use of the surface components for this. So I'm going to alias surface components form. I'm going to render a form in here. I need to look at the docs for form because I don't remember all of the assigns and properties. We're going to need a change set for the user. Okay. So I will do for change set, which doesn't exist yet. I will add a change handler because I do want to validate like some formatting at least whenever the user is like filling in the form. I don't mind like providing some feedback in like near real time with a debounce. So we'll do a change handler for that. We'll do a submit handler for whenever they hit submit on the form. I will need some handlers for that. So let me just do the default one. Oops. Might as well type it out here. Get some exercise. Event, what do I call it? Payload, socket, I should really turn this into a macro. Need to require logger. That will get indented for me. Logger.debug unknown event with this module. Event payload. And then I'm just going to let the socket go ahead, do its thing. Okay, so I should be getting some errors because I do not have a change set. So now I can take, let's see, I'm going to take some code from the signup mount because this should essentially be this almost the same thing, but with user. Okay, there we go. I need to alias user as well. Also need to alias accounts. Okay. By the way, I haven't done this on this version of LiveShowy, but I kind of have a mental framework in mind for how to sort these things and how to kind of group them together. It's not entirely consistent, and I could probably either look for a credo rule, like I need to add credo in probably my next branch or two. There may be something pre-built for this, for like sorting your like aliases and imports and everything. But I tend to put the, I guess require would go first, use, import, those would go next. Because those are kind of like the most impactful things. Then like this would actually probably move down. I've been calling it core. Components. And you know what, let's take a look at the LiveShowy repo because I forget exactly what I did there. LiveShowy LiveShowy. Let's go to one of the live views. Let's go to, let's see to do, hopefully I did this in index. There we go. All right, I've been a bad boy. I've put module doc in a lot of places, but that was a prototype. So once I do add Credo, it will whip me into shape. Okay, so this is kind of this is kind of how I established like a pattern for how to, like where to put things. They're not exactly alphabetically organized or anything like that, but this is kind of how I kind of organize things, my aliases. At least I started doing this in the last, like the prototype for LiveShowy. I haven't done it so much on the on this version. Okay, so I've got accounts. Oh, I need params. That's what's missing. Actually, this will just be that. This will be current user. So current user will be here. Then I need to assign the change set. Fix that typo. All right. Change user registration. All right, because this might be nil. There's a couple ways to solve this. I could add the user, like pattern match on a user struct for current user here, so that this version of mount would not actually be fired unless there was a valid user. Then I would have to add another mount function or callback that would just assign an empty change set, I guess. But that would happen for like a split second before the page connects the socket. I wonder if I can do this. Will that work? Okay, yeah. I don't know. Is this a good or a bad idea? So, bad idea, I guess. Let's undo that. Let it crash. I want to see. I am logged in. Okay. So, how do I want to do this? Do I want it 2 separate mounts, or do I want to case current user? Or throw another with statement here. I think for this, there's basically 2 scenarios and like 1 failure mode. So I think I'm just going to do a case statement so that this, don't want to be too verbose. So I'll say case current user do. So if that is actually a user struct, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, and then we're going to do current user. Otherwise, if it's actually, I don't need to even be specific about nil. I could just say if it's anything else. So if current user is like 1234 or some string or something, it would make sense, but I just want to make sure that this thing doesn't fail if, someone someday makes a mistake. So in that case, I will copy this and make a few changes. Oh wait, I could actually tidy this up a little bit. I will call this change set equals and I'll explain this in a minute. So this would be an empty user struct being passed into accounts dot change user registration with an empty map, and then map dot put. Got to get that in there. Action. This is duplicated, so I could do this in a different place. That works. This could be cleaner though. It's like I'm duplicating this, I'm duplicating this. Okay, this could actually be a lot cleaner now that I think about it. Don't you love this? Okay, so bear with me. And the formatter is going to take care of all that for me. Perfect. Okay. I don't know about you. I think that works nicely. So what's happening here is, now this will not catch any and all errors in the future. Like if someone did put in 1234, so I can refactor this right now, actually. So anyway, let me explain what I did and then I'll tidy up a little bit further. So right now, this could be a nil value or it could be an actual user struct. I know that because that's what's happening in the init assigns, but someday someone might make a mistake somewhere and this could be a truthy value that would cause this to crash. So I'm going to fix this in a second, but what it does now is current user will either be like a valid user struct that was already assigned, or it will be an empty user struct. And then I'm just assigning an empty map for change user registration. I'll actually update this change set through the change event handler. But for now, this will be like the initial change set whenever the live view mounts. So that works. We get our page is loading here. So we're not getting an error with the change set because it exists now. So let's see. What if I do want to ensure that current user is actually a user struct? This is a binary situation, like it's either going to be a user struct or not. So this is one of the few cases where I will actually like to use an if statement in Elixir. So if there we go. Maybe not. Oh, wait. Does it need, maybe this needs to be in parentheses? Nope. No match to right-hand side value. Okay, right, because it's pattern matching and nil is going to throw an exception. So I need to reverse this actually. I need to see if current user is nil and then only handle that. Okay, so is nil. Or, you know what, just to, this will work. But the only catch here is that, so is struct would match on any struct. Like it might be not an actual user and that would break things. Maybe I need to case current user. Let's do it. Case current user do. If it's a user struct, great. If it's anything else, we're going to return a empty user struct. Okay, that also works. That gives me a lot more control just to make sure that only a user struct will be passed through. Anything else will kind of be ignored and replaced with a user struct. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay. I've been going for about an hour now on a Sunday night. I think I'm going to call it a night. Yep. So, yeah, I'm going to call it a night so I can get to bed on time to wake up early, go to the gym, do gym stuff. Week 2 of going to the gym. So, yeah, if you're watching live or if you're watching this later on, thanks for sticking around. And feel free to hit me up in the chat. You can also find me on Twitter. This is my Twitter right here. And yeah, I'm happy to chat either on Twitch or Twitter or in real person. So I will be at Impex starting. So that's this week. That's this week. That's just a few days away. So if you're going to Impex, it would be great to catch you in person. Let me know that you're watching the live stream. That would be great to hear. And yeah, otherwise I'll be back online. I scheduled 2 o'clock on Saturdays. I think next week I may be getting back. Like that may be pushing it a little bit. Let me take a quick look here. Okay, I will not be back by 2 o'clock next week, so I'll update my schedule and I may just postpone to Sunday. Sunday may be better anyway because, I mean, Sundays going forward, I'm typically not super busy on Sundays, and that would give me more, like I'm not going to go out partying or anything on a Saturday, or I mean, really on a Sunday. So I think Sundays are going to be better for live streaming, at least for me. I'm curious how the audience might will that help or hurt the audience? But anyway, we'll find out. So anyway, I will see you next Sunday. Thanks for watching.